Dreaming of blissful summer days and creamy popsicles? Capture sun-drenched memories with the Orange Vanilla Dream Hydration Multiplier from Liquid IV. Just one stick and 16 ounces of water can help hydrate you better than water alone. Live your summer dream with Liquid IV. Tear, pour, live more. Go to liquidiv.com and get 20% off your first order with code INDULGE20 at checkout.
Bugs crashing your pack's party? Whether they've got paws or sneakers, your pack deserves a home that's protected from pests. That's where Wondercide comes in. Plant-powered protection made with steam-distilled natural essential oils that actually work. It kills and repels fleas, ticks, mosquitoes, and ants without questionable ingredients or overpowering smells. Safe to use around kids and pets when used as directed, lab-proven to work fast, and proudly made in the USA. We offer sprays for pets, people, homes, and yards. Plus, spot-on treatments, collars, and even shampoos. Whatever your pack needs, we've got it covered. Founded by a pet parent looking for a better way to protect her dog Luna, Wondercide's now protected over 21 million lives and counting. You might have even seen us on Shark Tank. Go to Wondercide.com and use code WONDER20 for 20% off your first order. That's WONDER20 at Wondercide.com. Wondercide. Protect your pack with plant-powered Wondercide today.
When a firefighter who saves lives becomes the one taking them, when a father who promises protection becomes the greatest threat his children will ever face, you get Robert Fiser, a man so terrified of losing his family that he chose to destroy them instead. This is what happens when trauma turns toxic and control becomes catastrophic. Born in 1961 to Jan Howell and William Fiser in New York, Robert William Fiser started life like millions of other American kids. The family relocated to Arizona when Robert was young, and by most accounts, his early childhood looked pretty standard. 3 kids, 2 parents, suburban life in the Southwest. Nothing that could make you think you were looking at a future family annihilator. Trauma has a way of reshaping people from the inside out, and when Robert turned 15, in 1976, his parents divorced. Divorce was becoming more and more common in the 1970s, but for Robert, watching his family fall apart became the defining moment of his entire existence. He processed this event differently than most kids would. This became his blueprint for terror, the thing that would haunt every relationship he ever had. Robert graduated high school in 1979 and immediately enlisted in the Navy, serving aboard the USS Belleau Wood. Here's where the story takes its first major turn toward disappointment. Robert had bigger ambitions than regular Navy service. He wanted to become a Navy SEAL, the elite of the elite. In 1982, his SEAL application was rejected. This rejection hit Robert hard, adding another layer to his growing collection of perceived failures and humiliations. He left the Navy that same year and transitioned to civilian life, eventually finding work as a firefighter in San Diego County. At least in this career, he could be the hero, the one who saves people from disaster, which is kind of what he wanted to be with the Navy SEALs, maybe a hero complex. By 1987, Robert had met Mary Cooper, a deeply religious woman who valued family above everything else. Mary came from a close-knit family, faith-centered background, and she saw marriage as a sacred commitment. The couple married and settled in Scottsdale, Arizona, close to Mary's family. This proximity to her support system would later prove both a blessing and a curse. Robert and Mary went on to have 2 children, Bobby and Brittany. From the outside, they looked like the perfect American family. Robert was active in their community church, appeared to be a devoted father, husband, and maintained steady employment. Neighbors saw a man who seemed to have his life together. But behind closed doors, the reality told a completely different story. Mary's family would later reveal the truth about their marriage. Robert had transformed Mary into what they described as a yes sir wife. He controlled every aspect of her life, treating his wife and children like possessions rather than people he loved. This need for absolute control stemmed directly from his childhood trauma. Having watched his parents' marriage crumble, Robert became obsessed with preventing the same fate for his own family, even if it meant destroying the very people he claimed to love. Mary's father would later say, "We never knew a thing. She didn't want Mommy and Daddy to know anything she was going through. She took care of those two precious kids." Mary had become an expert at hiding the abuse, protecting both her children and her family from the knowledge of what was really happening in her home. Mary's devotion to motherhood was absolute. Her children were her world, and she did everything in her power to shield them from their father's increasingly erratic behavior. She was living for Bobby and Brittany, trying to maintain some semblance of normalcy in a household ruled by fear and control. By 1998, 7 years after Bobby was born, cracks began appearing in Robert's life carefully constructed facade. He started missing church services regularly, leaving Mary to explain away his absence to their religious community. Around this time, according to reports, Robert contracted a urinary tract infection after cheating on Mary with a prostitute. He desperately wanted to hide both his infection and its cause from his wife, terrified that the truth would expose his hypocrisy and threaten his control over the family. Despite treating Mary horribly, Robert remained adamant about one thing: his marriage would never end in divorce. He would rather die than repeat his parents' mistake. The couple attempted marriage counseling with their church pastor, but the sessions failed to resolve their fundamental problems. Neighbors frequently heard them arguing about money and intimacy, their voices carrying through the walls of their Scottsdale home. Robert's behavior became increasingly disturbing as the new millennium approached. Friends noticed significant changes in his personality during hunting trips, which had always been his primary outlet for stress. One particularly memorable expedition, Robert killed an elk and celebrated by smearing its blood across his face. This macabre ritual shocked his hunting companions, who had never seen him behave so bizarrely. Full disclosure, I live in the South, and doing that is not strange. I mean, it's weird to me, a non-hunter, but I've seen people do it. Anyway, during another hunting trip, Robert crept up behind a family friend and fired his gun into the air repeatedly, terrorizing them for his own amusement. His hunting buddies later reported that Robert had begun expressing deep anxiety about losing his family. He would tell anyone who would listen that he, quote, could not live without his family, a statement that would prove prophetic in the most horrific way possible. By 2001, Mary had reached her breaking point. She confided in friends that she wanted to end her marriage for the sake of their children. Whether she communicated this decision directly to Robert remains unclear, but given his possessive nature and his stated fears about losing his family, he likely sensed that his control was slipping away. April 9th, 2001 started like any other Monday in the Fisher household. Robert left for his job as a respiratory therapist at the Mayo Clinic, but he departed earlier than usual. His behavior throughout the day would later be scrutinized for clues about his state of mind and his plans for that evening. Robert picked up his daughter Brittany from school around 3:30 p.m. to attend a ceremony where she was scheduled to receive an academic award. However, he rushed her out of the event before she could actually receive her recognition. This detail would later strike investigators as significant. Why would a father who allegedly loved his daughter deny her the moment of this achievement? That evening, neighbors heard Robert and Mary arguing with unprecedented intensity. Their voices carried through the neighborhood for hours, escalating into screaming matches that continued to around 10 p.m. Then, suddenly, the Fisher house fell silent. Completely. What happened next represents one of the most calculated and brutal family annihilations in American criminal history. Robert William Fisher systematically murdered his entire family, starting with his wife. Mary died first. Robert slashed her throat, then shot her execution style to ensure she was dead. This combination of methods suggests this was personal, an act of rage and control rather than a crime of passion. After killing Mary, Robert crept into the bedrooms of his children where they were sleeping. He slit Bobby and Brittany's throats from ear to ear, ending their lives where they slept. The children never had a chance to defend themselves or even understand what was happening. Once he confirmed that his family was dead, Robert began implementing his escape plan. He doused the house in gasoline, then cut the home's natural gas line. He lit a single candle, creating a delayed ignition device that would give him hours to disappear. Before leaving, he took his dog Blue, 2-year-old Queensland Heeler, and drove away in Mary's car. For 10 hours, natural gas filled the Fisher home while Robert put distance between himself and the crime scene. At 8:42 a.m. on April 10, 2001, the gas reached the candle flame. The resulting explosion was so powerful that it shook the entire neighborhood like an earthquake. Firefighters arrived quickly, working desperately to prevent the blaze from spreading to neighboring homes. When they finally gained access to the structure, they discovered the charred remains of Mary, Bobby, and Brittany Fisher. Robert had hoped the fire would destroy all evidence of the murders, making the deaths appear accidental. His plan might have worked if he'd been more careful about covering his tracks. However, investigators quickly began piecing together the events of the previous evening. CCTV footage showed Robert at a nearby gas station, withdrawing $280 from an ATM while driving Mary's Toyota 4Runner. 4 days after the explosion, Robert William Fisher was named as the only person of interest in the 3 homicides. The FBI launched a massive manhunt, and tips began pouring in from across the country. Robert had what investigators described as an everyman face, making positive identification extremely difficult. He was your average-looking, middle-aged American white man, the type of person who could blend into almost any crowd. The last confirmed evidence in the case surfaced 10 days after the explosion. Searchers found Mary's Toyota 4Runner abandoned in the Tonto National Forest, about 100 miles northeast of Scottsdale. Even more disturbing, they discovered Blue, Robert's dog, in dire condition under the vehicle. The dog was severely dehydrated, malnourished, and highly agitated. Rescuers had to sedate him before they could safely remove him from his hiding spot. The discovery of the dog raised more questions than it answered. Why would Robert abandon his pet? Had something happened to Robert in the wilderness, or had he planned this abandonment as part of his escape strategy? Investigators found human feces in the area, suggesting Robert had spent at least some time there, but no other physical evidence emerged. On June 29, 2002, Robert Fisher was added to the FBI's 10 Most Wanted list, with a reward of $100,000 offered for information leading to his arrest. Over the following years, hundreds of tips and alleged sightings were reported, but none led to his capture. The most promising lead came in February 2004, when Canadian authorities arrested a man who bore a striking resemblance to Robert Fisher. The unidentified man had the same facial scarring and missing teeth as Fisher, leading investigators to believe they'd finally caught their fugitive. However, fingerprint analysis conclusively proved this was not Robert Fisher, and the man was released. In April 2016, the FBI released age-progressed images showing what Robert might look like after 15 years on the run. These images generated renewed interest in the case but failed to produce any credible leads. In 2021, Robert Fisher was removed from the FBI's 10 Most Wanted list after 20 years. The Bureau stated that he no longer fit the criteria for inclusion, though they assured the public that the investigation would continue. The question of whether Robert Fisher is alive or dead has consumed amateur detectives and law enforcement professionals for over 2 decades. Several theories have emerged, each with its own merits and weaknesses. The first theory suggests that Robert successfully escaped to another country and has been living under a new identity since. Proponents of this theory point to his military training, survival skills, and the head start he gained through his elaborate escape plan. However, the limited amount of cash he withdrew and his lack of sophisticated resources make this scenario less likely. The second theory proposes Robert has been living off the grid in remote wilderness areas, using his hunting and outdoor skills to survive. Given his extensive knowledge of Arizona's backcountry and his experience as an outdoorsman, this theory has some credibility. The vast, rugged terrain of the American Southwest could potentially hide someone determined to remain invisible. The third theory, which I find the most plausible, is that Robert died by suicide shortly after abandoning his dog in the Tonto National Forest. People often argue that narcissistic personalities don't commit suicide, but this reasoning has been proven wrong numerous times. The comparison to Brian Laundrie, who killed himself, allegedly, after murdering Gabby Petito, shows that even controlling, abusive individuals can choose suicide when faced with the consequences of their actions. Robert's decision to kill his family stemmed from his terror of losing them through divorce. Once he had committed these murders, he may have realized that he destroyed the very thing he was trying to preserve. The psychological weight of his actions, combined with the certainty of life imprisonment or execution, if caught, might have driven him to end his own life in the wilderness. Regardless of where Robert Fiser is today, his actions on that April 9th in 2001 destroyed far more than 3 lives. Mary's family lost a daughter, sister, and beloved mother. Bobby and Brittany Fiser had their entire futures stolen from them. The Scottsdale community was shaken by the realization that such evil could exist behind the facade of suburban normalcy and religion. Robert Fiser represents the ultimate perversion of family values. His claim that he could not live without his family led him to ensure that his family could not live at all. His fear of divorce drove him to commit acts far worse than any marital dissolution could ever be. The case remains officially open, and the FBI continues to accept tips about Robert Fiser's whereabouts. Whether he's hiding somewhere in the world or died in the Arizona wilderness over 2 decades ago, one thing remains certain. Robert Fiser deserves to face justice for the brutal murders of Mary, Bobby, and Brittany Fiser. Their memory deserves that much. And frankly, so do we all. Thanks for listening to 10-Minute Murder, bingeable true crime stories. I'm Joe, I'm your host, and I really appreciate you taking the time to listen to the episode today. Now, if you're off to binge more episodes, as I know many of you often do, don't let me stop you. But if this is your first time listening to the podcast, please take a moment to hit subscribe right now. You can also go to 10minutemurder.com, learn about the podcast, everything we've done in the past. And I say we like there's more than just me, but it's just me. We is me. But go to 10minutemurder.com. You can also send me an email if you go there, like this one from Michael in Tennessee. Hey Joe, love the pod. Let me ask you this question. I know that sometimes you like to talk about different things other than true crime. I'm interested, what videos are currently in your algorithm? What are you currently enjoying watching? And Mike, can I call you Mike? It's very specific and it's going to sound strange, but I've been watching a lot of videos of, so at ballparks, at baseball fields, many of them have dog days where you can bring your pets, you can bring your dog to the ballpark. But the videos that I'm currently enjoying the most aren't just specifically that. It's videos of these dog nights at ballparks, but then they play a doorbell sound and all these dogs start barking. I laugh so hard and I don't know why. It's funny, but it's not like laugh out loud funny, but it gets me every time and I don't know why. It's these cute dogs who most of them are dressed up for the game. They have like a cap on or a jersey or they've got something. They're just adorable. I love dogs. And then they play the doorbell sound and then the dogs start barking. And the ones that don't bark at the doorbell, they bark at the other dogs barking, and it just creates a whole stadium of barking dogs. And I know that's very specific, but if you've seen it, you know why I love it. All right, that's going to do it. That's your episode for today. Thank you again for listening to 10-Minute Murder. See you next time.